Let me cut through the noise and get straight to what matters. What you're about to hear isn't regurgitated self-help garbage. It's the raw, unfiltered truth about the habits that separate the elite from everyone else. I've spent decades watching how the real players operate, and I'm going to break down exactly what makes them different. Habit 1: Ruthless value prioritization. Let's get something straight about prioritization. What most people call prioritizing is just organized procrastination. Real prioritization is brutal, uncomfortable, and absolutely necessary. I'm talking about the kind of ruthless focus that makes average people think you're obsessed, because guess what? You need to be. Here's how this works in the real world. Every single morning, you need to look at your day like a hostile takeover specialist looking at a company. You're not there to make friends, you're there to create maximum value. That means every single activity gets put through a simple but brutal filter. Is this actually moving me toward my biggest goals, or am I just staying busy? But this goes way beyond just managing your daily calendar. This is about developing an entirely new operating system for how you approach everything in life. When I say ruthless prioritization, I mean ruthless. That means saying no to good opportunities because they're not great opportunities. It means walking away from profitable projects because they're not profitable enough. It means sometimes disappointing people in the short term because you're focused on long-term value creation. Here's what this looks like in practice. You wake up and immediately identify the one thing, not 3 things, not 5 things, one thing that would create the most value if you accomplished it today. That becomes your mission. Everything else is secondary. Period. No exceptions. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think prioritization is about doing the most important things first. That's amateur hour. Real prioritization is about eliminating everything that isn't absolutely crucial. I'm talking about regularly auditing every aspect of your life and business with a single question. If this wasn't already part of my life, would I add it today? If the answer isn't a hell yes, it needs to go. This extends to your relationships, your commitments, your investments, everything. You need to become comfortable with the uncomfortable reality that most things that take up your time are actually destroying value by preventing you from focusing on what really matters. That client that takes up 30% of your time but only generates 5% of your revenue? They need to go. That recurring meeting that's been happening every week for the past year just because it's always happened? Cancel it. That social obligation that you dread but feel guilty about declining? Done. The reality is, most people's lives are set up to prevent them from achieving extraordinary success. They've got so many small commitments, so many minor obligations, so many urgent but not important tasks that they never have the time or energy to focus on what could actually move the needle. This is where the rubber meets the road. You need to start treating your time and attention like the precious resources they are. That means putting a real value on them. If your time is worth $1,000 an hour, and if you're serious about success, it better be worth at least that. Then every hour you spend on low-value activities is literally costing you $1,000. But here's the part that really separates the players from the pretenders. This isn't a one-time exercise. This is a constant, ongoing process of evaluation and elimination. The moment you think you've got it figured out is the moment you start sliding backward. You need to be constantly looking for things to eliminate, constantly questioning whether your current activities are the highest and best use of your time and energy. And let's talk about what this does to your decision-making process. When you're truly practicing ruthless prioritization, decisions become much simpler. Instead of weighing multiple options and trying to find the best choice, you're simply asking, does this align with my top priority? If it doesn't, the answer is no. No deliberation needed. No guilt required. This level of prioritization requires you to develop something else, an immunity to FOMO, fear of missing out. Because here's the truth, when you're ruthlessly prioritizing, you will miss out on things. You'll miss out on lots of things. But you'll miss out on all the right things, the things that would have prevented you from achieving your most important goals. Remember this, the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. They understand that their success depends not on how many opportunities they say yes to, but how many good opportunities they say no to in favor of great ones. Habit 2: Strategic relationship architecture. Let's get something straight about relationships at the highest level. They're not about who you know, they're about who you can activate to create specific outcomes. This isn't your grandmother's networking advice. This is about building a sophisticated web of relationships that creates unstoppable momentum. Strategic relationship architecture starts with a fundamental shift in how you think about connections. Most people collect relationships like they're collecting baseball cards. They might be nice to look at, but they're not doing anything for you. What you need is a carefully curated network where every relationship serves a specific purpose and creates specific value. Here's how this works. First, you need to map out your relationship ecosystem. I'm talking about creating a detailed understanding of who's in your network, what they're capable of, what they need, and how they can connect to create value. This isn't just about making a list of contacts, it's about understanding the dynamics and potential synergies between different people in your network. But here's where it gets interesting. You're not just mapping out direct relationships. You need to understand second and third degree connections. Who do your connections know? What can they access? What opportunities can they create? This is about seeing your network as a living, breathing ecosystem rather than a static collection of contacts. The next level is about strategic positioning. You need to deliberately place yourself at the intersection of different worlds. If everyone in your network comes from the same industry or background, you're doing it wrong. The real value comes from being able to connect people and opportunities across different domains. The banker who knows tech, the lawyer who understands marketing, the entrepreneur who gets politics, these are the connections that create unprecedented opportunities. Here's something most people miss entirely. Your network needs to be asymmetric in your favor. This means every relationship should create more value than it consumes. I'm not talking about taking advantage of people. I'm talking about being so valuable to your network that the asymmetry is natural and welcomed. You also need to understand the concept of network leverage. One strong relationship with someone who has an extensive, high-quality network can be worth more than 50 relationships with people who don't. This means being strategic about who you spend time developing relationships with. Sometimes the best networking move is to focus intensively on building a deep relationship with one key person rather than spreading yourself thin across many superficial connections. But here's where the real magic happens. You need to become a master at creating value for your network even when there's nothing in it for you directly. This isn't altruism, it's strategic positioning. When you become known as someone who can make things happen, who can connect the right people at the right time, who can see opportunities that others miss, you become a nexus of opportunity. People start bringing deals to you first. They start thinking of you when opportunities arise. This requires developing a new skill, the ability to think several moves ahead in relationship terms. When you meet someone new, you're not just thinking about what they can do for you now, you're thinking about how they might fit into your network 6 months or 2 years from now. You're thinking about who they should meet, what opportunities might be relevant to them, how they could create value for others in your network. You also need to master the art of relationship maintenance. This isn't about sending holiday cards or making small talk. It's about staying meaningfully connected to key people in ways that matter to them. This means keeping track of what's important to them, understanding their goals and challenges, and being ready to add value when opportunities arise. One crucial aspect that most people miss, you need to regularly audit and upgrade your network. Just like you need to be ruthless about prioritizing your time, you need to be ruthless about evaluating your relationships. Are they creating value? Are they moving in the right direction? Are they connecting you to the right opportunities? If not, you need to be willing to let them go or let them naturally fade to make room for more valuable connections. And let's talk about something that makes most people uncomfortable. You need to be willing to end relationships that no longer serve your goals. This isn't about being cold or callous, it's about being honest and direct. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is acknowledge that a relationship isn't creating value for either party and let it go. Remember this, your network is not just a list of people you know, it's a carefully curated portfolio of relationships that should be generating returns in terms of opportunities, insights, and access. If it's not doing that, you're doing it wrong. Habit 3, anticipatory decision making. Let's talk about something that separates the true players from the wannabes, the ability to make decisions based on where things are going, not where they are. This isn't about prediction. It's about understanding patterns so deeply that you can see the next move before anyone else even knows the game has started. Anticipatory decision-making is about developing a completely different relationship with time and causality. While everyone else is reacting to what's happening now, you need to be positioning yourself for what's going to happen next. This isn't some mystical ability to see the future. It's about training yourself to see patterns and understand their implications. Here's how this works in practice. Every situation, every market, every relationship has patterns. These patterns create ripples, and those ripples create opportunities, but only if you can spot them early enough. You need to develop what I call pattern recognition on steroids. This means constantly asking yourself, if this is happening now, what's likely to happen next? And what's likely to happen after that? But here's where it gets interesting. You're not just looking at obvious, linear patterns. You need to understand second and third order consequences. When Amazon started selling books online, most people saw a bookstore. The real players saw the future of retail. When Bitcoin appeared, most people saw a digital currency. The visionaries saw a fundamental shift in how value could be transferred and stored. This kind of thinking requires you to develop multiple mental models and apply them simultaneously. You need to understand economics, psychology, technology, and human nature, and you need to understand how they interact. When you're making a decision, you're not just thinking about the immediate outcome, you're thinking about how that decision will reshape the playing field. Here's something most people miss entirely. Anticipatory decision-making isn't just about seeing opportunities, it's about creating them. By understanding where things are heading, you can position yourself at the intersection of multiple trends. This isn't about waiting for opportunities, it's about being in the right place at the right time by design. You also need to master the art of scenario planning. This means regularly running through different possible futures and understanding how your current decisions might play out in each of them. I'm not talking about simple if-then thinking. I'm talking about developing detailed scenarios that account for multiple variables and their interactions. But here's the part that separates the pros from the amateurs. You need to be willing to act on your analysis before all the data is in. By the time something is obvious to everyone, the biggest opportunities are usually gone. This means developing the confidence to move on partial information when your pattern recognition tells you something significant is about to happen. This requires developing another crucial skill, the ability to distinguish between signals and noise. In today's world, we're bombarded with information. Most of it is noise, irrelevant data that just creates confusion. You need to develop filters that help you focus on the signals that actually matter, the ones that indicate significant shifts or opportunities. And let's talk about something that makes most people uncomfortable. Sometimes anticipatory decision-making means making moves that look wrong to everyone else. When you're positioning yourself for where things are going rather than where they are, your decisions might not make sense to people operating on a different timeline or with different information. This leads to another critical aspect. You need to develop immunity to both criticism and FOMO, fear of missing out. When you're making decisions based on where you see things going, you'll sometimes have to pass on opportunities that look great right now but don't align with your future vision. You'll also sometimes have to pursue opportunities that others think are crazy. Remember this, the biggest opportunities don't announce themselves, they whisper. Your job is to develop the ability to hear those whispers and the courage to act on them before they become obvious to everyone else. Habit 4, pressure mastery. Let's get real about pressure. It's not something you manage, it's something you master. This isn't about stress relief techniques or mindfulness apps. This is about developing the ability to think clearer, move faster, and make better decisions precisely when the stakes are highest. Here's the first thing you need to understand about pressure. It's not your enemy. Pressure is just energy, and energy can be directed. The same pressure that crushes coal into dust can turn it into diamonds. The difference isn't in the pressure, it's in how it's handled. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They try to avoid pressure or reduce it. That's amateur hour. Real pressure mastery isn't about reduction, it's about conversion. You need to learn how to convert pressure into performance, stress into strength, challenges into fuel. This starts with understanding that pressure is largely self-created. It comes from the gap between expectations and capability. Close that gap, and you change your relationship with pressure entirely. This means constantly expanding your capabilities while maintaining realistic expectations about what you can control. Here's how this works in practice. You need to deliberately put yourself in high-pressure situations regularly. I'm not talking about random stress. I'm talking about calculated challenges that push you to develop specific capabilities. Every major deal, every crucial presentation, every high-stakes negotiation is an opportunity to strengthen your pressure mastery. But here's the key that most people miss. You need to train for pressure like an athlete trains for competition. This means creating specific scenarios and practicing your response until it becomes automatic. When million-dollar decisions need to be made in milliseconds, you don't have time to think. You need to react from trained instinct. This requires developing what I call pressure protocols, specific mental and physical routines that you can activate under pressure. These aren't just coping mechanisms, they're performance enhancers. They might include specific breathing patterns, mental triggers, or physical movements that help you maintain clarity and control. You also need to master the art of pressure compartmentalization. This means developing the ability to isolate pressure to specific areas without letting it contaminate your entire state of mind. A setback in one area shouldn't affect your performance in another. This requires mental discipline and clear boundaries. Here's something else. You need to understand the difference between productive and unproductive pressure. Productive pressure pushes you to perform better, think clearer, move faster. Unproductive pressure just creates noise and confusion. Learning to distinguish between the two and eliminate the latter is crucial. But let's talk about something that makes most people uncomfortable. To truly master pressure, you need to become comfortable with discomfort. This isn't just about tolerating stress, it's about actively seeking out situations that challenge you. The more comfortable you get with discomfort, the more pressure you can handle. This leads to another critical aspect: recovery and preparation. Just like an athlete needs recovery time between intense training sessions, you need to build in recovery periods between high-pressure situations. This isn't weakness, it's strategic preparation for the next challenge. Remember this: pressure mastery isn't about being tough or unbreakable. It's about being flexible, adaptable, and capable of maintaining clear thinking and decisive action regardless of the circumstances. It's about turning what breaks others into what makes you stronger. Habit 5. Intellectual capital compound interest. Let's talk about something that most people completely misunderstand: the real power of knowledge accumulation. This isn't about reading more books or collecting more degrees. This is about building an intellectual arsenal that compounds in value over time. Here's the first thing you need to understand: knowledge isn't linear, it's exponential. When you learn something new, it doesn't just add to what you know, it multiplies the value of everything you've already learned. That's why the most successful people I know aren't just learning, they're learning how to learn better. But here's where it gets interesting. You need to approach your intellectual growth like a hedge fund manager approaches their portfolio. You're not just randomly acquiring information, you're strategically building knowledge assets that work together to create unprecedented returns. This means being incredibly selective about what you learn and how you learn it. Think about it this way: every piece of information you consume either adds value to your intellectual portfolio or dilutes it. Most people's minds are like mutual funds filled with junk bonds, lots of random, low-value information that doesn't create any real returns. You need to build a portfolio of high-value, interconnected knowledge that creates compound returns. Here's how this works in practice. First, you need to identify your core knowledge domains, the areas where having deep expertise will create the most value for you. But here's the twist: you also need to identify adjacent domains that can create powerful combinations. Some of the biggest breakthroughs come from connecting ideas across different fields. But let's talk about something most people miss entirely. The real power isn't in what you learn, it's in how you synthesize and apply that knowledge. I've seen plenty of walking encyclopedias who can't create any real value because they don't know how to convert knowledge into action. You need to develop what I call knowledge arbitrage, the ability to take insights from one field and apply them innovatively in another. This requires developing a sophisticated learning system. You can't rely on random reading or sporadic study. You need a systematic approach to acquiring, processing, and applying new knowledge. This means having specific protocols for how you read, how you take notes, how you review information, and most importantly, how you connect new information to what you already know. Here's another crucial aspect. You need to develop knowledge leverage points. These are key concepts or frameworks that, once mastered, can be applied across multiple domains to create value. Things like systems thinking, game theory, or psychological principles, these are intellectual tools that create compound returns when applied correctly. But here's where it gets really powerful. You need to start thinking about your knowledge base as a value creation engine. Every new piece of information should either strengthen your existing knowledge structure or open up new opportunities for value creation. If it doesn't do either of those things, it's probably not worth your time. This leads to something else that most people never consider. You need to regularly audit your knowledge portfolio. Just like you would review and rebalance a financial portfolio, you need to assess what knowledge is still creating value and what needs to be updated or replaced. Some knowledge appreciates over time, some depreciates. Knowing the difference is crucial. And let's talk about execution. This isn't just about passive learning. You need to be actively testing and applying your knowledge in real-world situations. Every deal, every negotiation, every strategic decision is an opportunity to deploy your intellectual capital and learn from the results. Remember this, your intellectual capital is the most valuable asset you have. Unlike physical assets, it can't be taken away, and it appreciates in value the more you use it. But only if you're strategic about how you build and deploy it. Habit 6. Leverage recognition and multiplication. Let's cut straight to the heart of what separates the players from the pretenders, the ability to recognize and create leverage. This isn't just about using leverage, it's about seeing leverage opportunities where others see only obstacles. Here's the first thing you need to understand about leverage. It's everywhere. Financial leverage is just the beginning. There's technological leverage, network leverage, intellectual leverage, and time leverage. The real power comes from understanding how to identify and stack these different forms of leverage to create exponential returns. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They think leverage is about doing more with less. That's amateur thinking. Real leverage is about creating systems where small inputs create massive outputs. It's about building machines that generate value while you sleep. Think about it this way. Every situation, every relationship, every asset has potential leverage points. Your job is to identify these points and figure out how to activate them. This means developing what I call leverage vision, the ability to look at any situation and immediately spot opportunities for multiplication. Here's how this works in practice. First, you need to audit everything you're currently doing and ask, how can this be leveraged? Can it be automated? Can it be delegated? Can it be systematized? Can it be scaled? If you're doing anything more than once without a system to multiply its impact, you're leaving value on the table. But let's talk about something that makes most people uncomfortable. Creating real leverage often requires letting go of control. You need to build systems and processes that can run without your direct involvement. This means investing time up front to create structures that can operate independently. This requires developing another crucial skill, the ability to design and implement systems that can scale. This isn't just about delegation or automation, it's about creating robust processes that can handle growth without breaking. Every system you build should be designed with multiplication in mind. Here's another aspect that most people miss. You need to understand the concept of leverage stacking. This means identifying ways to combine different forms of leverage to create compound effects. When you can stack financial leverage with technological leverage and network leverage, you start creating truly exponential returns. But here's where it gets really interesting. You need to become a master at recognizing what I call hidden leverage points, opportunities for multiplication that others miss because they're too focused on the obvious. These might be relationships that can be activated in new ways, assets that can be repurposed, or knowledge that can be packaged and scaled. This leads to another critical aspect. You need to develop leverage consciousness. This means constantly asking yourself, how can this be multiplied? How can this create value in multiple ways? How can this work for me while I'm working on something else? Remember this, the goal isn't to work harder, it's to put yourself in a position where your efforts create cascading effects. Real leverage isn't about doing more, it's about designing systems that multiply your impact. Habit 7. Reality Distortion Mastery. Let's talk about the most powerful habit of all, the ability to bend reality to your vision. This isn't some new age nonsense about manifestation. This is about developing such a clear and compelling vision of what's possible that you begin to reshape the world around you. Here's the first thing you need to understand: reality isn't fixed, it's malleable. But only for those who have the vision to see beyond what is to what could be, and the conviction to turn that vision into reality. This isn't about positive thinking, it's about positive action backed by unshakable belief. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think reality distortion is about ignoring reality. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's about understanding reality so deeply that you can see the leverage points where it can be changed. It's about knowing what's truly fixed and what's just accepted convention. Think about it this way: every major innovation, every breakthrough, every transformation in history came from someone who refused to accept the current reality as fixed. They saw possibilities where others saw limitations. They found ways forward where others saw only walls. Here's how this works in practice. First, you need to develop what I call vision clarity, the ability to see your desired future with such detail and conviction that it becomes more real to you than the current reality. This isn't daydreaming, it's strategic visualization backed by concrete planning. But let's talk about something that makes most people uncomfortable. To master reality distortion, you need to be willing to be misunderstood, even ridiculed. When you're pursuing a vision that others can't see yet, you'll face skepticism, doubt, and often outright opposition. You need to develop immunity to these reactions. This requires developing another crucial skill: the ability to maintain your vision while staying grounded in current reality. This isn't about denying where you are, it's about refusing to accept it as permanent. You need to simultaneously hold two realities in your mind: what is and what could be. Here's another aspect that most people miss: reality distortion isn't a solo sport. You need to be able to enroll others in your vision. This means developing the ability to communicate your vision in a way that makes it real and compelling for others. The most powerful reality distortions happen when you can get others to see and believe in your vision. Remember this: the most successful people in history weren't just good at seeing opportunities, they were masters at creating new realities. They understood that the future isn't something that happens to you, it's something you create through the power of vision, conviction, and relentless execution. The question isn't whether these habits work. I've seen them transform too many lives to doubt their effectiveness. The question is whether you're ready to commit to the level of personal transformation they require. Because make no mistake, this isn't about making a few tweaks to your daily routine. This is about fundamentally upgrading your entire operating system. Now, what are you going to do with this information? Because knowing isn't enough, it's the execution that counts.